All right, I gotta start talking about auditory processing, sound processing. It's such a big one, guys, especially with ADHD. I would say the ability of one to be able to process sound is the biggest factor when it comes to ADHD, and I'll tell you why. Sound, or the way your brain processes sound, is kind of in two ways. You have an external sound that your brain is always processing, which is all your environmental sound. It's whatever you hear around you. So right now I hear roosters crowing. I can hear my dog walking beside me. I can hear birds chirping. All of that my brain is going to pick up, whether I'm conscious of it or not. It's my environmental sound that I'm picking up, and my brain has to process it. Okay? The other sound my brain has to process is an internal sound. It's the sound that's going on in my mind. It's the words I'm thinking about. It's that internal dialogue. Hey, let's go. Let's go. Come on. Here's my dog's looking for a cat. We found one yesterday. Your internal dialogue, though. So think about that. Your brain has to process two different types of sound, internal and external. All right? So now let's give you some examples of this. You're in school, okay? You're a young kid, you're in school, and you're in a classroom. There's, let's say, 20 other kids in this classroom, and you're trying to take a test, okay? You're there with your pen and paper, and you're trying to read questions and mark answers, and there's two kids in the classroom that are tapping their pencil. Tap, 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 tap. And the teacher's walking around. She's getting up from her seat, and she's walking around. She's making a little bit of noise. You can hear a fan in the background. There's another kid over here that's reading his questions quietly to himself. He's whispering. You've got other kids who are tapping their feet. All of those sounds have to be processed by the brain if you're in that environment. You can't get around it unless you put some headphones on, which some kids do, right? But we don't all have that luxury all the time. So the other one is the internal sound, okay? This is the daydreaming sound, especially if it comes in the form of words. So when somebody else is talking, okay, like when the teacher is talking and they're talking about something that's difficult to understand because maybe it's new, or it's just something that's totally irrelevant and boring, so that happens a lot. The child is gonna tune out of that environmental sound and tune into their internal sound because it's more relevant and it's more interesting. They can think about the video game they were playing earlier or the night before or whatever. Okay? So, auditory processing affects your ability to pay attention and focus. All right? If your brain has a hard time processing all those sounds going on in your environment, then it's going to call your visual processing away from what you're supposed to be focusing on to go investigate what all those sounds are. Okay? So the head pops up from the page and they start looking around. But the same thing can happen with, and this is often how daydreaming starts, if those kids are listening to a lecture. If they're having a hard time processing what that teacher is even saying because they're using words that kid's never heard or understood, then their brain's gonna switch. It's gonna go, no, that's too hard. Switch and start processing internal sound. I know, because I've done it. I've done it before. And I also know because I still do it sometimes. We actually all do it sometimes. It's a normal function unless it's so excessive that it inhibits us from being productive, right? So some kids, some people, they have no control over it. They might hear certain tones, they might hear certain sounds, they might hear certain words that trigger their brain to make that switch. Okay? Auditory processing, that's a good start. We'll follow up on this later. Post questions in the comments below, and stay tuned. See ya.